The other day, I went on a drive with my girlfriend, who has a deep love for antiques. We spent the day hopping between antique shops and thrift stores. While she hunted for rare collectibles, I had my eyes peeled for old Famicom cartridges and vintage clothing. Even though we were after different things, we both enjoyed rummaging through the same kinds of stores. It felt like a treasure hunt, one where we were both winning. By late afternoon, our car was packed with our finds, and we were in high spirits. That's when we spotted a small, run-down shop by the roadside. Whoa! Sometimes these dingy little places have hidden treasures, like a gold edition of Obake no Kyutaro. I said it half-jokingly, but my girlfriend just gave me a look of mild disapproval. Even so, she followed me inside. The store was tiny, about the size of a convenience store, and cluttered mostly with old books. No furniture, barely any vintage clothes. As for retro games, all I found was a single, dust-covered copy of Kukyoku Harakiri Stadium, sitting alone on a shelf like some kind of cruel joke. I was about to turn to my girlfriend and say, "Let's get out of here," when she suddenly let out a small gasp. I hurried over and found her standing in front of a basket filled with stuffed animals and trinkets. "Did you find something good?" I asked. Her eyes were wide with excitement. "This is amazing!" She reached deep into the bottom of the basket, brushing aside plush toys and ceramic figurines, and pulled out a perfectly shaped icosahedron, a 20-sided polyhedron. Looking back now, I wonder, how did she even notice something buried so deep, completely out of sight? Maybe, at that moment, things had already begun. "Is it a rare collectible?" I asked. "I've never seen one before, but I really want to buy this." To be fair, the object was strangely beautiful. Its surface had a muted, almost hypnotic shimmer, and the edges were sharp yet smooth to the touch. As a decorative piece, it was oddly captivating. If it's cheap, why not? She carried the icosahedron to the register. Behind the counter, an elderly man with a gaunt face sat reading a book so old its pages had yellowed to the color of parchment. "Excuse me, how much is this?" At that moment, I noticed something odd. The old man, still hunched over his book, lifted his gaze, his eyes landing on the object in my girlfriend's hands. For a split second, his face twisted into an expression of sheer shock. Then, just as quickly, he masked it with a neutral smile. "Ah! Oh! That one! Let me check the price. Just a moment." His voice was slightly unsteady. Without another word, he shuffled into the back room, which seemed to double as his living quarters. From behind the curtain, we could hear him whispering urgently, his voice tense. Another voice, presumably his wife's, responded in hushed tones. We couldn't make out what they were saying. A minute later, the old man returned, holding a tattered, yellowed sheet of paper. "This is actually a toy called RINFONE. This paper has some details about it," he explained. He spread out the ancient-looking document on the counter. It featured an illustration of the icosahedron, labeled RINFONE in bold, old-fashioned letters. Below it were a series of images. First, the icosahedron itself. Then, the object transforming, first into a bear, then a hawk, and finally, a fish. The writing underneath was a mix of Latin and English, written in an old script that was difficult to decipher. "Apparently, this object can transform into different animals," the old man continued. "Try holding the RINFONE in both hands and rubbing it gently, like you're shaping an onigiri rice ball." My girlfriend did as he said, cupping the object between her palms and carefully pressing it. Click! A small part of one of the icosahedron's pieces pushed outward, as if it had unlocked. "Whoa, that's amazing," she gasped. The old man nodded. "Now try twisting that part, or pulling it up slightly." She did. Another face of the icosahedron sank inward. "Wow, it's like a puzzle. My nickname, you should try it too." She handed it to me. It's hard to explain how the mechanism worked, but it reminded me of the old Transformers toys, where cassette tapes, guns, or trucks could shift and twist into robots. The RINFONE was the same. By pushing, twisting, and pulling different sections, the icosahedron transformed, first into a bear, then a hawk, then a fish. There were probably other shapes it could take, but we didn't figure them out just yet. Even I had to admit, this thing was fascinating. "So, how much is it?" my girlfriend asked hesitantly. The old man scratched his head. "It's quite old. But to be honest, we had completely forgotten we even had it. He paused. Alright, how about 10,000 yen? If you put it online, collectors would probably pay tens of thousands for it. My girlfriend, ever the skilled haggler, haggled it down to 6,500 yen. With a triumphant smile, she paid for the RINFONE, and we left the shop, our latest treasure in hand. That Monday, after having dinner together, my girlfriend and I went our separate ways and returned home. The next evening, after work, I received a call from her. "Yukun, this thing is incredible. Slowly figuring out how it transforms is so much fun. I couldn't stop thinking about it at work today, I couldn't concentrate at all. It's way more addictive than in a game." She was so excited that she barely gave me a chance to respond. After the call, she sent me a picture. It showed her hands holding the RINFONE, now partially transformed, with what looked like a bear's head and 2 legs protruding from it. I was genuinely impressed by how intricate it was and texted her back before heading to bed. The next day, on my way home from work, I got another message from her. "This thing is insane. I stayed up all night working on the RINFONE, and I finally got the bear form complete. You have to come see it." I chuckled at her enthusiasm and decided to drive straight to her place. "Wait, you stayed up all night? Did you even go to work?" Yeah, I went. But I drank way too much coffee, and now I feel kinda sick," she replied, laughing. On her table sat the RINFONE, now fully transformed into a bear, standing on all fours with its head slightly raised. Whoa! This is seriously incredible! How the hell does it even work? Right? It's so addicting. Next, it's supposed to transform from a bear into a hawk. I was thinking of starting that tonight. Hey, don't stay up all night again, okay? You can work on it tomorrow. Yeah, you're right, she said with a laugh. That night, after a simple homemade dinner, I headed home. On Wednesday night, after work, I sent her a quick message. "Did you get some sleep? How's everything?" She replied almost instantly. "Yeah, I slept properly. I'm heading home now, can't wait to keep working on the transformation." Later that night, around 11 PM, while I was playing my PS2, she sent another picture. "The hawk is complete. It looks so real. Whoever designed this thing is a genius." I opened the image. The RINFONE had now taken the form of a hawk with its wings spread wide. Even though it was just a toy, it looked astonishingly lifelike, as if it were ready to take flight. I replied, "Damn, that's awesome. Now all that's left is a fish form. But don't get too obsessed, take your time." Then, I went to sleep. On Thursday night, I had just stepped out of the bath when my phone rang. It was her. "Yukun, did you just try calling me?" "No." "Why?" "For the past 5 minutes, I have been getting weird calls, one every 30 seconds or so. When I answer, all I hear is the sound of a crowded city, like murmuring voices, and then it just hangs up." A strange chill ran down my spine. What does the caller ID say? That's the creepiest part. Usually, it would show a number, or unknown caller, or public phone, right? But this one just says, "Kanata." I froze. Wait, Kanata as in beyond or far away? Yeah. And I don't have any contacts saved under that name. Want me to come over? No, I'll just turn off my phone and sleep. Alright. By the way, how's the RINFONE coming along? Did you finish the fish form? Almost. I'll lend it to you once I complete it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I tried to shake off the unease as I hung up. On Friday evening, I went over to her place. The RINFONE was now nearly a complete fish, with only the dorsal and tail fins left to be attached. "So, you got another weird call at lunch?" She nodded. "Yeah. I was eating my lunch when my phone rang. This time, it just said unknown caller on the display. When I answered, I heard a chorus of men and women whispering, 'Let us out.' Then it hung up. A cold shiver ran down my spine. That's seriously creepy. Let's go to the phone carrier tomorrow and see if they can check it out." "Yeah, let's do that." That night, we talked about how amazing the RINFONE was while trying to figure out how to complete the fish form. Despite fiddling with it for a while, we couldn't figure out how to reveal the dorsal and tail fins. Maybe they made the final transformation the hardest, she mused. Eventually, we got sleepy, and since it was Saturday the next day, I decided to stay over at her place. That night, I had a nightmare. A dark abyss stretched before me. Naked men and women were crawling out of it, desperately trying to climb to the surface. I was among them. Climbing, struggling, reaching. Just a little more. Almost there. Finally, I reached the top and grabbed onto the edge. Then, a woman's hand grabbed my ankle. TAKEUSWITHYOU. I woke up drenched in sweat. It was 5:07 AM. Unable to sleep, I lay in bed, waiting for her to wake up. On Saturday, we went to the phone carrier, but they couldn't find anything wrong. Then, on a whim, we decided to visit a well-known local fortune teller, the Cat Lady, a woman rumored to have uncanny accuracy. She lived in a house full of cats and performed readings there. We called ahead, and surprisingly, she had an available appointment the next day. That night, after shopping, I stayed over again. On Sunday, we arrived at the fortune teller's house and rang the bell. Yes? We have an appointment under tomorrow. It's open. Come in. As soon as we stepped inside, a cat in the hallway hissed and bolted away. In the next room, the fortune teller sat surrounded by even more cats. The second we entered, every single cat shrieked and scattered in terror. Even we were taken aback. Before we could say anything, the cat lady's face darkened. "I'm sorry, but please leave." I frowned. "Why? What's wrong?" She hesitated. "My cats. They react strongly to certain energies. I've never seen them react like this before." A terrible feeling twisted in my gut. I told her everything, the calls, the nightmare, the RINFONE. Her face paled. "I see something behind your girlfriend." "What do you mean?" "It looks like a statue of an animal. You need to get rid of it immediately." "What kind of animal?" She shook her head. "It's a condensed, miniature version of hell. A gateway to the underworld. Get rid of it, now." That night, we wrapped the RINFONE in its instructions in newspaper, secured it with tape, and threw it in the trash. A few days later, she made a chilling realization. RINFONE is an anagram of Inferno, hell. I forced a laugh. Ha ha ha. Just a coincidence, right? But deep down, I wasn't so sure. All I could do was pray there wasn't another one out there.